this recording, we'll talk about the stomach. The stomach, we're going to be located in your left upper quadrant, just below your diaphragm. When your stomach is empty, it has a volume of approximately 50 milliliters, but a very, very, very full stomach can hold up to approximately 4 liters, which is basically a gallon. So if you think of the last time you saw a gallon of milk or a gallon of water in the store, that's kind of how much your stomach can hold. Please do not put a gallon of food and liquids in your stomach at one time. You will have a tummy ache, y'all. There are 4 different regions to the stomach. We've got the cardia, the fundus, the body, and the pylorus. And the cardia is specifically the area that sits closest to the heart. This is where food enters from the esophagus. You do have glands that secrete mucus to help protect the stomach from its own acidic secretions. The fundus is the top domed roundish part that sits right on the diaphragm. The body is the middle portion where you also have additional glands. These glands secrete the acids and enzymes involved in digestion. And then the pylorus is the J-shaped or tapered end of the stomach that's continuous with the duodenum. Again, we have more glands here. These secrete mucus as well, but they also secrete gastrin and other hormones that help stimulate gastric glands, and they help with digestion. So here's where we're kind of located, right up under the good old diaphragm. We've got our 4 layers, the serosa, the mucosa, all that stuff we've already mentioned. So now we kind of know where we're at. The cardiac region would again be where we connect to the esophagus. The fundus is the upper round part. The body is the middle portion, and the pylorus is the end portion. All right, we do have 2 sphincters to help control things going in and out of the stomach. The cardiac, or the lower esophageal sphincter, allows food to go from the esophagus into the stomach. Okay, and the pyloric sphincter allows food to go from the stomach into the duodenum. Okay, both of these sphincters are really just thickened layers of the muscularis externa that we've already mentioned. And then when your stomach is empty, you have all of these mucosal folds, all of these wrinkles. These are your rugae. As you fill in your stomach, these stretch out and they give it more of a smooth appearance. But if it's empty, your stomach is wrinkly. We have 2 mesenteries, okay, which are serosa, that hold the blood vessels, the nerves, the lymphatic vessels, kind of holds the stomach in place. 2 in particular are very prominent and easy to see on closer inspection. We have the greater and the lesser omentum. Okay. The greater omentum is much greater because of the size of it. It runs from the stomach all the way down to the pelvis, and so it covers quite a bit of your abdominal pelvic cavity on the inside. The lesser omentum is lesser size-wise because it goes from the stomach up to the liver instead. So if we go back, where's my picture? Here's my picture. Okay, so this is the bottom of the stomach, but this is the beginning of the greater omentum. This goes all the way down your abdominal cavity to your pelvis. This yellow region, the small region, is your lesser omentum, and we're just connecting the stomach to the liver. And that's right next door, so it's not nearly as large. All right. The mucosal layer of the stomach is full of gastric pits. It gives it kind of a wavy appearance, and these gastric pits have a few different types of cells. We've got the columnar cells as well as goblet cells that are found within the pits. You already know that the goblet cells are responsible for producing the mucus that helps protect the lining of the stomach from the acid. And then we also have gastric glands that are at the base of the pits. These contain endocrine cells that secrete hormones, and they also contain exocrine cells that secrete the acid and other enzymes that form the gastric juices. And you can kind of see the wavy appearance here of the pits. All right. And again, that's all mucosa. And if we blow that up, we can really see that there are 4 main cells besides the simple columnar and the goblet cell. So we're pretty good on columnar cells, we're pretty good on goblet cells. There are 4 additional cells that we're going to familiarize ourselves with. We've got enteroendocrine cells, also known as G cells. We've got chief cells, parietal cells, and mucous neck cells. Your enteroendocrine cells, okay? We call them G cells because one of the 7 hormones that these cells secrete is gastrin, so G cell for gastrin secretion. Your vagus nerve is going to promote the secretion of gastrin, which is secreted by the stomach in order to stimulate the production of hydrochloric acid and intrinsic factor. Now, hydrochloric acid, that one's kind of self-explanatory. That is one of the main components of your stomach acid. Intrinsic factor, we'll talk about that here in a second. But here's what you're going to need to keep in mind, okay? Your G cells secrete gastrin. Gastrin stimulates the release of the hydrochloric acid and the intrinsic factor. So G cells do not directly produce hydrochloric acid or intrinsic factor, okay? G cells make gastrin. All right. Now, gastrin inhibiting peptide, which comes from your small intestine, inhibits gastrin production, and it does this when your stomach is emptying. Okay, because as your stomach is emptying, we have a reduced need to continue to produce the hydrochloric acid. Now, chief cells produce something called pepsinogen. I think I skipped some. Oh, I did. I skipped one. Okay. Parietal cells. I knew something was wrong, y'all. All right. Parietal cells produce and secrete hydrochloric acid. Okay. These parietal cells, the hydrochloric acid is responsible for the acidic environment of the stomach. Gastric juices have a pH of approximately 1 to 2. Remember that the pH scale really only goes down to a 0, so this is about as acidic as you could get. Okay. Now, in addition to helping destroy a lot of disease-causing organisms that just can't live at such a low pH, the acid also helps activate pepsinogen. Okay, so pepsinogen is quote-unquote activated and is turned into pepsin. Pepsin is an enzyme that hydrolyzes proteins in your diet. Okay, so if you eat a lot of protein, you're going to need a lot of pepsin. Okay, in order to create pepsin, you have to convert pepsinogen. In order to do that, you need hydrochloric acid coming from the parietal cells. Okay, parietal cells also produce intrinsic factor. Intrinsic factor is required for the intestinal absorption of vitamin B12. Why do we need B12? Because B12 is required for erythropoiesis. So if we want to continue to make new red blood cells to replace our old worn out red blood cells, we need B12. In order to get the B12, we need intrinsic factor. Okay? So there's a lot of stuff going on here, y'all. Make sure you are really keeping all of this straight. Now, chief cells are what actually produce pepsinogen. Okay? And again, the pepsinogen is converted to pepsin as long as we have adequate amounts of hydrochloric acid. Again, the pepsin is responsible for helping hydrolyze the proteins from the diet that have made their way to the stomach. And our fourth cell is the mucous neck cell. These are going to secrete mucus that protects the stomach so it does not digest itself. Okay. Renin is another enzyme produced by the stomach that helps break down milk proteins specifically. Okay, so sometimes people can't drink milk because they don't have lactase, so they can't break down the lactose sugar in milk. But sometimes people can't consume milk because they actually can't break down the protein found in milk because they don't have renin. Okay, and then last but not least, we have another type of cell within the fundus that produces a hormone called ghrelin. I like ghrelin because ghrelin makes your belly growl, y'all. Okay, so it is responsible for stimulating your hunger, your appetite. So ghrelin basically says, hey, I'm hungry. and then you have to eat. Your stomach is responsible for a couple of different things. We do both mechanical and chemical digestion. The mechanical digestion comes in the form of peristalsis and food churning. So you basically move the food around in the stomach to help break it down. And then the chemical digestion comes in with the enzymes, for example, the pepsin that we've mentioned, the renin that we've mentioned. Your stomach does little to no absorption though. If you consume alcohol or aspirin, then your stomach will absorb these two things. But if you do not consume alcohol or aspirin, then your stomach has no absorption function at all.